And now back to Matthew Hatfield and that evil basketball coach. Blast you, Ed Young!
And we are back here on 757 Saturday Sports Talk. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel on Cova Sports TV. We have a special guest with us. You read him in the Washington Post. He once upon a time did some work in the 757, going back to his days with the Suffolk News Herald, Suffolk Sun, and he's now going into the Basketball Writers Hall of Fame. Ed, you see him part of that distinguished group of folks with Milton Kent, Kevin McNamara, Bob Holt, Al Featherston, John Clay, and Doug Feinberg. We're talking about a good friend, Chuck Culpepper. Chuck, thanks for coming on the show, and congratulations. You're a Hall of Famer now.
Thanks very much. I don't believe it, but okay.
Well, it's there. We're not making it up. It's not. Nobody's pulling your leg. You've deserved it for all your hard work. But real quickly before we get into the basketball games, because I know you don't want to talk about yourself a ton, you had to feel a really warm, melting moment in your heart when you got that news, right?
Well, I looked back over all the names that are in it, and it's more than 200, I think, and so many whom I either know or who have departed and whom I knew. So that was the part that I realized, well, I've spent a lot of life at the court sides and the hallways of arenas, and, and in the workrooms, they are all people I felt lucky to hang out with. So it made me read back from the beginning, which is in the 90s when it started, back across the sort of the list of people, and was, some of it was kind of melancholy too, because there's quite a few who I knew well who have passed on. So yeah, it was like that.
One game that sticks out from all your years of covering, I know that people love, they do this with coaches, and I do this to Ed all the time. Is there one game is there a favorite? You've covered a lot of things besides just college basketball, college football, tennis, golf, you name it. But for college basketball, was there one game you were at where you said to yourself, you pinch yourself later and says, I can't believe I got to cover that, witness that, document that, chronicle that?
So the first thing that comes to mind is 33 years ago yesterday in Philadelphia. Duke 104, Kentucky 103. The caliber of that game, well, everybody knows about that game, but the caliber of that game was so, it wasn't just thrilling in the sense of the suspense, because the lead changed hands. I think it was 5 times in the last minute of that overtime. The game went to overtime, but also the way it changed hands, the caliber of play. People were making plays, not, we would all understand if they missed plays, if they did not make plays, if the tension was too much, but they were making plays. And I remember that night, a friend of mine took me to a nightclub, and, we finished working late. And so this was 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was just kind of staring into space, sitting at a bar, staring into space, because that game had been, so just, it had been its own force in a way. And then I have to bookend that with March 22, 1998, which is a more forgotten game, but an incredible one, where Duke and Kentucky met again in a regional final again. And Duke had a 17-point lead with 9:30 to play. Tubby Smith's first year at Kentucky, and Kentucky roars back and wins 86-84. So then the third one would be that Villanova, North Carolina final of 2016. But that was a harsh deadline, that one, the lead changing hands, and you had to send in the job within as fast as you could after the horn.
Yeah, Chris Jenkins' heroic shot to lead Villanova to a championship in Jay Wright's Wildcats, but just a remarkable recall. And Ed, as a basketball coach, even last night, as we're watching those games unfold, they always bring up the inbound there with Leitner and Hill. And as we watch, can Houston prevent a miracle from happening against Purdue? They ended up winning at the end.
It is. And Chuck, first of all, thanks for coming on. And more importantly, well-deserved. Feel good about it. I know you don't really talk a whole lot about yourself and whatever. To get into that Hall of Fame as a writer, you've had to do something. That's just not, you get one, come on in, you come in. We'll expound for you, because you've done a great. And the fact that you Humble starts at the Suffolk Sun here in Suffolk, Virginia. And your office was, when they opened the closet door to get the broom out, they saw your office. You've come a long way. You deserve your work. So we will sing your accolades for you.
Now real quick though, Chuck, what year were you at the Suffolk Sun? Because Ed's been coaching his 500+ wins towel in the background there. He coached at Nansemond for 20+ years, led Suffolk High to a state title. I don't know if you guys bumped into each other during his time at Suffolk High. What year was it?
Well, I started stringing there, what they call it, which is when you're not a full-time employee, but when I was 14. So that was 1976. So
that was before Ed. Ed was at Suffolk High. What was your?
I wasn't even born yet. No, and by the way, Chuck, the Suffolk Sun, everybody streams for them. I'm not sure they have a building now or a physical place because Matt also has done some work for him too, and he doesn't even know where he doesn't even know where it's located because it was always streaming and sending stuff. So hats off to you. I came to Suffolk in '84. I think it was my first year at Suffolk High. So I came after you. You were long gone, but to know that you had some humble beginnings with the Suffolk Sun, which is kind of a division of the Virginia Pilot, you have done some stuff. So it's good in here. Now, the question I would have for you, Chuck, too, is and this is my great time of the year, too, as many people, the NCAA tournament. I just don't think Super Bowl is big. NBA playoffs, best of 7, World Series, here we go. But the NCAA tournament for 3 weeks, you've got the little John, you got David, and you got Goliaths, and you've got the upsets, the long pass, the craziness, the personalities. I just think the NCAA tournament, and I've been fortunate enough to go to 8 Final Fours when I coaching high school, coaching college. There's nothing like it. My first couple of years there, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was just looking around, you see all the personality, whatever. But how do you've covered a lot of different things. How do you showcase it in terms of the NCAA tournament against everything else? Where do you place it?
I think it's something that happened in the past week, or something that in the past week I started to really crystallize. I've thought about it for years, but never in this way, maybe. And it's the losing locker rooms. And the losing locker rooms, somebody's usually crying in there. And often, all those seasons are ending. And they're all ending at the same time, same time frame. And like I was in Providence at the first 2 rounds there. And on Thursday, we had 4 losing locker rooms. And on Saturday, we had 2. That's 6 teams that you watch have their seasons end, sometimes abruptly, sometimes like Clemson in a completely unexpected manner where you fall behind 40-16 and you're trying to play catch up. And it's jarring and it's jolting. But the most important thing about it is that in the losing locker rooms, you get a sense as an outsider of what it was like for them to be together for those months and what it was like for them to collaborate and how hard it was, what they did together, and what a valuable human experience it was. And to me, that's what separates March Madness from the other events. And the women's tournament would be the same if I were assigned to that, but you would never in those other events see so much of that in one place. You see so much meaning in one place, and every single person will tell you 100% that the loss hurts when the season ends. The death of the daydream sort of hurts. You envisioned yourself going a few rounds farther and further and what that would be like. But what hurts the most is that they're not going to be together anymore. So you get a sense of what a really powerful experience that was for them to be together across those months and how hard it was. And remember, when we're talking about teams that are in the tournament, we're talking about teams who generally were together, were cohesive and did function very well together. It's like this festival of human collaboration. And I do tend to love it more every year. And as the number, when it starts with the 64 on the Thursday, and then the number of teams starts to dwindle, I start to get sad because that means it's gradually leaving us. Now we're down to 8 and by Monday 4.
Yeah, we went from 64 to 16 like that within those first 2 days. The Thursday, Friday are extremely zany. Now, before we look ahead to these Elite 8 games, which I know Ed and I want to dive in with you here, Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you were in Providence last week for the big Patino Calipari showdown to Ed's
Yes.
Idols. Tell me about it. Tell me about it, because it was a rock fight. It was an ultra intense game, but it was not a thing of beauty in terms of the shooting.
That's true. We're talking about, can there be a great ugly game? And it was kind of like that. It's the 3-point shooting was the lowest percentage in any NCAA men's tournament game ever. 4 for 41. I think 2 for 19 for Arkansas in victory, 2 for 22 for St. John's. I was struck by a few things. One was the incredible amount of noise that St. John's had created and brought fans there. Obviously it's easy travel to Rhode Island from New York. And so I was just struck by the sound of them. And they had that sound that I think you would recognize of fans who have been starved for a while, and it had that kind of ring to it. So it was kind of a shame for the tournament in a way that it was, after the first weekend, it was gone. That fresh, new sort of energy was gone. But the other thing, is just, I covered the Sweet 16 in 1992 as a sports writer in Kentucky when Kentucky played UMass and barely got out of it to play Duke. And Pitino was coaching Kentucky and Calipari was coaching UMass, and Calipari was the new thing. And Pitino had recommended him for the job as part of the, helping UMass choose a coach. And they were just getting started, and they were both these, big presences in a way. And so then to see, what are we now? Well, 33 years later, to see them 72 and 66 and opposite each other. And to I wasn't in Kentucky when they were both coaching, Kentucky and Louisville there for those years, but it was, I don't know, it was very hard to explain what it was like.
Yeah, heck of a battle there, as it was Arkansas moving on to the Sweet 16, but they end up falling in overtime to Texas Tech. One more for me before I turn it back over to Ed for the games today. Just to look back at these Sweet 16 games that just finished up, Chuck. One stand out above the rest for you. Certainly we had an overtime game in Texas Tech, Arkansas, which I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the only overtime game we've had so far in this tournament. We've had just one buzzer beater, which was Maryland's with Derek Queen beating Colorado State in the round of 32. You also had the game last night that went under the wire with Houston prevailing against Purdue. Was there one of the Sweet 16 games that stood out above the rest for you? Was it that high-scoring matchup, which maybe you saw that one with Alabama BYU?
Right. I guess that was it, because Alabama's 25 threes rocketed past the record, which had been 21, and that record had stood for 35 years. And the team that held that record for 35 years is one of the all-time darlings that we, that what sort of the why we love the event kind of team, Loyola Marymount. And they played Michigan in the second round that year. And it still blows me away that Michigan scored 115 points that day and got blown out by 34, 149 to 115. It's just staggering. And whenever I think about it, and so to think about it again and to watch this Alabama team kind of jet on past it, I was also, though, on TV last night, really, really sort of in awe of the run that Auburn made when it was down 9. That there was a lot of energy, a lot of actually smiles in that run. I thought that run was really powerful. So that struck me too. And of course, we all love Kelvin Sampson's inbounds play.
Yeah, Ed loved that as a coach. It was right up your alley. I'm sure you've had a few of those, and you'll be taking them moving forward, Ed.
Oh, that one I wrote down. I wrote that one down last night and filed it under my own system and name. So when I get the chance to get back on the sideline, we run in that one. Chuck, when you look at today's games as we move forward, there's so much we could talk about with the games in the past, but I know time is of the essence. What do you see today in the matchups? Intriguing. Alabama, Duke. Some people think this could be both teams over 100 each. And then you've got Florida, Texas Tech, where I don't think anybody is giving Texas Tech any chance in this game. And I think they're going to surprise me. I don't know if they'll win it. I got Florida too. I got Florida playing. No, I got Auburn playing. No, I got Florida playing Duke, I think it is, in the final. But anyways, what assessment these two games and what you think we can see.
Well, I think the thing that was really striking about Duke and Alabama Thursday night is that they played beautiful basketball, both of them. It was and the way Duke plays together after not being together for very long is just, I mean, they are a beautiful team to watch. They really are. And of course, Alabama, when it's making its shots, you know, and it's all about, and Alabama's all about the speed of it too. And now 4 Sweet 16s in the last 5 years. So these, in a way, in the 2020s, these two are, you know, both of them are way up there on the, I don't want to say, people always use that word blue bloods, but I just think they're both sort of empires now in this era. So that's the game, I'm going to go to, and I'm really excited about seeing is just their caliber on Thursday night. Both of them was just really, really high. And, you know, and Cooper Flagg, of course, of Duke, Player of the Year, National Player of the Year and everything. It's entirely different to see a player in person, I think. You know this, Coach. And I was just really floored by how he moves. And it's uncommon, I think, how much in control he is of that 6'9", 205 that doesn't come off as gangly at all, and how powerful he looks. And and how, of course, sees the whole court and his assists and everything. So I think that Duke Alabama game I started thinking about Duke Kentucky of long ago when I started thinking about that game, because I think that has don't want to jinx it, but the potential to be really something.
The thing that I guess what people were saying about Alabama, the negative, is as good as they are on offense, they don't put the time and effort on defense.
True.
So and you made a point, if they're not hitting shots, they're not stopping a whole lot of people from hitting theirs.
Right.
I kind of believe that, but on the other hand, they're not horrible defensive team. They just spend so much time and they look so real good on the offensive end that I don't think they're a bum team when it comes to deep. They have too many athletes, and they got Nate Oates, who's not, sit back and arms folded, legs crossed type coach. He's on them for what they've got to do. And a lot of times when teams get scores in the high 90s and hundreds, people will say, well, they don't play defense. My argument with that is, if you're scoring a lot of points, the other team has the ball a lot. So if they know how to run their offense and hit, they're going to score points too, no matter how good you are. And I lived that in my career when, just to make an example, we averaged 100 points a game in 88 season at Suffolk High School. And I remember screaming at my assistants, why are we so bad on defense? We're giving up 65 points a game. And I mean, angry mad. And they said, Coach, we're beating teams by 35 points a game, number one. Number two, we score almost every time we have the ball. They're going to have the ball a lot. And then it kind of dawned on me, oh, you know what? I'm thinking we should be giving up 25 points, 30 points a game. But no, because we played a lot of good teams who are going to score. And I think that's the problem that's thrown on Alabama that shouldn't be right. The other game, Texas Tech, Florida, is it a matter of Florida just has too many weapons, as they've shown? And then the other thing is not Texas Tech, wait a minute, who are they type team? And here we are, Elite Eight, and nobody talks about Texas Tech.
That's right. Not a peep. And had to play Cal Perry in the Arkansas in the regional semi out there. And that just, deepened the idea that nobody was talking about them. And, there's two things about that. I don't think people who don't, a lot of people start tuning into the sport for March Madness. And that team finished second behind Houston, alone in second in the Big 12. How many teams are in the Big 12? Like 30. And that team, finished second behind Houston and is the only team to beat Houston since, I believe, around late November. I believe Houston's won every game other than that since then. And I believe that it was in Houston I could have that wrong, but I believe it was when they beat them.
I think that's right. Yeah.
So, that's it. And then that program, I don't never know how much to read into the idea of, past teams at a program, but I do think it gives some sort of, when you think of a program that went all the way to the, as we know, final game in 2019 and had a 3-point lead on Virginia with 15 seconds left and looked like it was probably going to win it, and has done some things in the tournament since. There's a sense of expectation there, I think, and a sense of belonging, and if they win that, I'll be shocked, but maybe not fall down shocked.
Well, probably, Chuck, tell me if I'm wrong, he's probably Grant McCaslin, the coach for Texas Tech, who used to be at North Texas, is probably the least known of the remaining Elite Eight coaches. When you look at Kelvin Sampson, obviously Duke with John Shire together for Coach K, Tom Izzo at Michigan State, who is known for March runs, Bruce Pearl at Auburn, Rick Barnes at Tennessee. You look at the guys that we have left in this thing. Todd Golden at Florida is young, but he's been in the news for off-the-court situations too. Mm-hmm. And you look at who's left in this thing, and he's probably McCaslin, the guy you say about who is that guy from a story standpoint. Might be interesting for you if they are able to move on here. I'm curious. And then you move on to the games on Sunday where you have Auburn, a 1 seed, and Houston, a 1 seed, taking on a 2 seed, with Tennessee taking on Houston after losing last year in the Elite Eight to Purdue with Zach Edey. They had a big-time first-rounder in Dalton Connect last year. They got one probably this year with Chaz Lanier to go with Zakai Ziegler. And then Auburn, Michigan State figures to be another rock fight type of game with Pearl's Tigers and Izzo Spartans. People have talked so much about, Chuck, that we've lost some of the charm. There's not as many Cinderellas, upsets, but this is where the tournament distinguishes itself, doesn't it? Because you have the powers, the 1 and 2s, and this can be your great games. And I think if we get a classic like Duke Bama, I wouldn't be shocked if we get a classic or two tomorrow. Would you feel the same way?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if it'll be as pretty as I expect Duke Bama to be, but it'll be, compelling maybe in that Arkansas St. John's kind of way, only with many more made shots, I think. And, the seedings of the 8 teams, I got curious about this. They add up to 13. The lowest they could possibly add up to would be 12. So there's only one, seed in there that wouldn't be total chalk. And that's which one? Oh, that's Texas Tech is a 3. So I wondered if, and we've had other seasons. Think of 2022, St. Peter's, a 15 seed, made it to the Elite Eight. So, and there were other, teams in that Elite Eight that made it add up to, I think, somewhere near 40 or something. I wrote them all down, somewhere near 40. So I wondered if there had ever been another year where the Elite Eight were only added up to this low. And there was, and it was 2007. It was when Florida was trying to repeat, and they played Oregon, which was a 3 seed, in their regional final. And all the other 3 games were 1-2s. So you're right. For all the melancholy we feel about, people have felt about no Cinderellas and about only big conferences in the Sweet 16 for the first time, here comes the reward, I think. I think you're absolutely right about that. This is the reward for that, is that, okay, look at St. Peter's, an incredible run, 3 wins. I think they beat Kentucky, Murray State, and Purdue that year. And so incredible run. But the regional final with North Carolina was pretty much done pretty fast, and, not a thing that anybody remembers, really. So I think, that's one byproduct of getting the Cinderella that far. But the byproduct of not getting any Cinderellas this far is the, huge games that we've got, 4 games that we've got for this weekend. In Houston, Tennessee, I don't know how to sort out that. I mean, I love Ziegler about as much as I love any college player that I can ever think of. That game to me that's even more of a rock fight than Auburn and Michigan State.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I expect LJ Cryer to shoot it better, but that could be one of those games that has 12 to 15 fouls in the first 10 minutes, second half, but you're just on the edge of your seat watching to see where the next twist is. So I'll get you on this one here. Maybe Ed has one to follow up here before we let you run. And we thank you so much immensely for your time here before the Elite Eight matchups tonight. as we kind of handicap this thing, I think my bracket, I had Auburn, Alabama at the end, SEC, which, by the way, could have easily had 6 of the 8 in the Sweet 16. Almost half the Sweet 16 was SEC schools. Is your feeling an SEC school cuts down the nets here with your chances of being, obviously you have Auburn, Florida, Alabama. What's your gut tell you? Because I feel like I watch a game and it changes my gut on who's going to win this thing. What's your feeling on who ultimately captures this thing at this moment here on March 29th?
Well, I like Duke the most, I think. I like the roster the most. I like their possibilities the most. I think they have the most answers, Of course, we all know that doesn't mean you win it, and nor would an Alabama win this very evening, keeping them out of the Final Four at the brink for the second straight year, nor would that be a stunner, I don't think. So, but I do like Duke. I also, we have this thing that's going on this weekend, which is each of the regional finals, as I think about it, each one has an SEC team in it. Therefore, could look for the first Final Four, all of one conference. People were joking about the SEC tournament in Nashville being of a higher caliber than the NCAA tournament. There were wisecracks going around about that. But I believe, as I think back on that tournament, I believe these would, the same 4 teams that were in that Final Four in Nashville for the conference championship, which Florida won, have a very plausible chance of being in San Antonio in the Final Four to make an identical Final Four for that. That is really something, and that's going to get us either if the SEC gets 3 teams in, it's going to have us talking about 1985 when the Big East Memphis was in the Final Four, not in the Big East, but then Villanova, Georgetown, and St. John's were all in from the Big East. So that's where this might be going. The very idea that we could have a duplicate Final Four in San Antonio is really wild.
It is. Ed, if we have Auburn, Florida, and Alabama, Tennessee, heads will explode all over the country, especially in the South.
Yes.
Well, Chuck, that's a good lead-in for what I want to ask you before you got to run. Stephen A. Smith this week, Jay Billis talked about. Well, Jay Billis was more so talking about what Stephen A. Smith had mentioned. Stephen A. Smith talked about the ruination of college basketball. You will never see mid-major or low team win it again, especially in the era of NIL, because the better players are going to be poached by the teams. Jay Billis came on with the idea that, hold on, Cinderella can still go to the dance. It's possible, whatever. I kind of went in the middle with both of these guys, and I definitely got to have your take because you're much smarter about it, closer to it than we are. I kind of think once these lower teams that are in there now who got beat earlier, their good players are going to be gone. So that team may not make another trip unless they get some diamonds in the rough out of the portal from smaller schools behind them. Because we're seeing a lot of teams with Division II players do really well because their roles fit very well and they move with their coach. That's where I think you're not going to see that happen. You could still have Cinderella come in here and win a game or 2, maybe even 3. If you want to call Drake a Cinderella at 30-some wins a year, come on now. And I think the other problem too is those coaches who did a great job to get there, they're going to be taken by the bigger universities whose team did get there, and people say, well, we're going to take him because he can get us there. I just think because of the NIL situation and everybody jumping for the money, and one of the things I've hated in this tournament, there ain't much I hate, is when these guys go to the foul line and you hear the announcer say he played at school 1, 2, 3, and sometimes 4. Now he's at his 5th school. That's unheard of in the past. Unheard of. So don't tell me they're chasing for their degrees. What do you think the situation is with the smaller schools of that nature in the future being here and getting, you just talked about the SEC having 4 teams in, which I think most people will hate because what it's going to show is most money wins. I don't care what anybody tells me. The SEC teams have more money for NIL than pay for play than I think even the other ones. And I know the ACC is getting hammered because they're not buying into it as much. But what do your assessment?
I think the Smith line about the this college basketball is going to keep being like this? I'm not sure, because again, you think of 2007, like we were talking about, we've had, like Billis said, I come down strongly on the Billis side when he said, we've had other years like this before. And it's true, where the Cinderellas got sort of wiped out. And another one of them is 2019, when Virginia won the title. That one had a lot of chalk in the regional final. I do think, yes, that where the money is very, very important. The thing that might counterbalance that is, and Pitino brought this up in Providence, which is, it used to be you'd play you'd be, say, a 4 playing a 13, and you were a lot better than that team. And Pitino was saying that's not true anymore. The difference between the wide gaps in seedings is not what it used to be. It's actually narrower in terms of caliber and capability. And I think part of that, and there's been a lot of talk about this in football, is the volatility itself might keep a lot of Cinderellas afloat through the years and might kind of sustain them. Just that volatility itself, because they too, can build something. Everybody's building quickly. You have to. It's going to be hard to, for teams to. And another thing Pitino was saying is they don't play together long enough to know each other in the way that he was familiar with coaching players, to collaborate and back in the day. So I think this could be, I'll be interested to see, of course, but I think this could be just a one-off like 07 was, or 19, where the Cinderellas die down for a year and then they, then they pop back up. Just 2 years ago, we had that Final Four with both FAU and San Diego State in it. San Diego State's a great program. It's got a great thing going for year after year. But Miami was in that Final Four. It's a quirky Final Four, very, very different. And I think the idea of having another Final Four like that in the years to come I think it could happen for those things Pitino was talking about. But as you say, it's very hard to argue against that idea of the money.
He is Chuck Culpepper, the outstanding columnist for the Washington Post. Go pick up a copy, read them online at WashingtonPost.com, and a Hall of Famer as well. Thank you so much for the time, my friend. Enjoy Newark, the Bama-Duke matchup, and then the Final Four down in San Antonio. I'm sure we'll be talking down the road.
Hey, Coach, I'm staying in a Met household right now.
Oh, no.
Celebrating the first Soto homer in here.
Well, I wish them luck. They'll do well. They will not outdo the Yankees unless they're playing a weaker schedule, which probably is. National League teams are obviously weaker. But I'm going to stick with my Yankees for a while.
All right. Be well. Have a great weekend.
Chuck, thanks a lot, man. Again, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Congrats. Thank you, Chuck. That is the one and only Chuck Culpepper with us here from the Washington Post as we talk about the college basketball, NCAA men's basketball tournament with him, Elite Eight. He's